Hello and welcome to Sleep with Stories tonight. Let us journey together to the golden sands of ancient Kemet, where monuments rose like sunlit mountains, and the lives of god-kings unfolded against a horizon that shimmered with forgotten magic. If you enjoy these calming journeys through history and imagination, don't forget to like this story and subscribe, so you can always return to these timeless places whenever you seek peace. Now, close your eyes and let the desert winds carry you. The very air of Kemet shimmered, alive with a magic so ancient it seemed woven into the sky itself. Colossal monuments of polished sunstone reached toward the heavens, their surfaces catching the first blush of dawn, reflecting light as blue as crushed lapis lazuli. This was a land where every gesture, every ritual, was believed to preserve the balance of the cosmos matter, fragile harmony that bound gods, kings, and mortals alike at the heart. Of this sacred world stood the Sunstone Citadel, a vast fortress of radiant stone, stretching across the desert like a petrified wave. By night, its chambers cooled in silence, echoing faintly with the memory of chants. By morning, it stirred with quiet energy, servants moving softly through shadowed halls, preparing offerings of incense and bread, their footsteps muted against marble floors. High above, in his private chamber, King Lanthorn the sun-crowned Pharaoh stood by a towering window. Upon his brow rested the crown of Etheria, its golden filigree as delicate as a spider's web spun from the very rays of the sun. To the world, it was a symbol of divine perfection, yet the king knew its hidden cost. Beneath its brilliance, there lingered a faint buzzing, a whisper that was not quite a whisper, a thought that was not quite his own. It seeped into his mind like water through stone, feeding his quiet paranoia. For if he faltered, even for a moment, Mat itself might unravel. His weathered hand trembled so faintly it might be mistaken for nothing, but he felt it, the weight of eternity pressing against his bones. Beyond the window, the awakening city stirred. To Kingland's eyes, the bustle of merchants and priests was more than daily life, which was a cosmic reflection, an endless performance of balance and order. And any shadow, any flicker in the distance, seemed to him a sign of imbalance. In the quiet of the chamber, Wren Sinclair moved gracefully, arranging scrolls on an ebony table. At 22, her eyes were sharp, observant, missing nothing. She had watched her king's hand tremble for years, had seen the slow tightening of his gaze, the deepening of his rituals. She admired his devotion, yet in the privacy of her thoughts, she wondered, was it duty or dread that consumed him? For Wren had glimpsed the darker mysteries hidden in the citadel's depths, ceremonies whispered of in fear, the ossuary tablet that listed names, loyal retainers, destined to follow the king beyond death into the labyrinth of the Somnus crypt. And though her loyalty ran deep, she could not ignore the faint chill such knowledge brought to her heart. Later, as the day ripened, Kingland entered the grand hall of adjudication. Vast columns soared into the heights, their surfaces inlaid with gold and lapis, shimmering beneath shafts of sunlight that pierced the air like divine spears. Courtiers bowed low, their voices hushed, their faces masks of reverence. Every pronouncement he uttered, every ritual gesture he performed, was not merely governance, it was the choreography of the cosmos itself. Yet beneath the grandeur, a silence echoed, a silence not empty, but full, of questions, of hidden fears, of a human soul weighed against the scales of eternity. So now, dear listener, let your breath slow. Picture the vast desert sky, the golden halls, the quiet flicker of torchlight. On polished stone, imagine the whispers of the past enfolding you, not as heavy burdens, but as soft threads weaving you into the timeless tapestry of history. Let go of the weight of power, of ambition, of eternity itself. Tonight, your only duty is to rest, to dream, to wander the golden halls in peace. The very air of ancient Kemet shimmered, alive with forgotten magic, as colossal monuments, polished sunstone reaching for the endless sky, pierced a firmament as blue as crushed lapis lazuli. You are invited to wander through the opulent, yet curiously unsettling, existence of its divine rulers, their history gently guiding you towards the quiet edge of dreamland. These were lives meticulously choreographed, believed to maintain the cosmic balance, or mat, a delicate thread, easily frayed by human imperfection. Imagine a dawn within the sunstone citadel, a sprawling marvel of polished stone, as King Thorn 48, the sun-crowned monarch, prepared for his day. His weathered hands, usually engaged in ritualistic gestures, trembled almost imperceptibly as Wren Sinclair, 22, lithe and observant, presented the crown of Ethiopia. Its weight, both physical and symbolic, settled upon Kingland, a conduit for Matt, yet its mystical residue subtly gnawed at his mind, fueling a growing paranoia about his perceived divine failures. Every grand pronouncement Kingland made from his golden throne, every ablution performed with Wren's quiet assistance, was a cosmic necessity. Yet, beneath this glittering facade of divinity, a darker current pulsed. Kingland's relentless quest for immortality led to monumental undertakings. The ossuary tablet, chillingly precise, detailed the loyal retainers, perhaps even Wren herself, destined to accompany him beyond the veil. Their service extended into the cold labyrinth of the Somnus crypt. You ponder the court's labyrinthine intrigues, where power was a double-edged sword, even family bonds concealing treacherous rivalries. These were figures of unfathomable authority, yet perpetually entwined with existential dread. As these ancient stories softly unfold, allow yourself to reflect on the true cost of absolute power and the lengths humanity would go for an eternal legacy. The whispers of the past envelop you, inviting you to rest, as the captivating, yet often disturbing, lives of these god-kings and queens drift through your consciousness. Like and subscribe for more calming journeys into forgotten histories. The Sunstone Citadel, in the heart of ancient Kemet, stretched across the landscape like a petrified wave, its polished sunstone catching the burgeoning light of dawn. The vast halls, still cool from the desert night, began to hum with a muffled energy. Echoes of distant chants from unseen ritual chambers drifted through the air, mingling with the low murmur of servants preparing the day's first offerings. You felt the subtle vibration beneath your bare feet, a resonance born of the palace's sheer mass and the ceaseless activity within its core. Kingland stood by a towering window in his private chambers, the crown of Etheria already settled upon his brow. Its golden filigree, intricate as a spider's web spun from the sun's own rays, pressed against his skin, a familiar, almost comforting weight. Yet, beneath the comfort, an insidious current flowed. He felt it now, a faint, almost imperceptible buzzing at the back of his mind, a whisper that wasn't quite a whisper, a thought that wasn't quite his own. It was the residue, the subtle degradation that the crown imparted, feeding the fertile soil of his own anxieties. His piercing gaze, the color of deep riverbeds, swept over the awakening city below, seeking any sign of imperfection, any shadow that might betray the delicate balance of my heart. He saw, or imagined he saw, a flicker in the distant haze, a disturbance in the desert winds, a ripple in the fabric of reality, perhaps a crack in the divine order he was sworn to uphold. The tremor in his left hand, usually so slight as to be almost unnoticeable, became a faint, persistent throb. He clenched his fist, the knuckles white beneath his weathered skin. His legacy, his very eternity, hinged upon this meticulous maintenance. The pharaoh was not merely a ruler, he was the living embodiment of cosmic harmony, and any perceived imbalance was a direct indictment of his divine authority. Ren moved with quiet efficiency through the chambers, arranging scrolls on a carved ebony table, her lithe form almost blending into the tapestries that adorned the walls. Her shrewd, observant eyes missed nothing. She had seen Kingland's hand, tremor for years, watched the subtle changes in his demeanor, the slow tightening of the lines around his eyes, the increasing intensity of his ritualistic devotion. She understood the immense pressure that bore down upon him, a weight that could crush even a god-king. Yet her loyalty, deep and unwavering, was tempered by a quiet skepticism. She had witnessed the private ceremonies, the hushed preparations for undertakings few outside the inner circle could ever imagine. The horrors she had seen were not of battle or famine, but of an existential dread that drove men to unfathomable lengths in pursuit of an eternal echo. Later, as Kingland presided over the morning court in the grand hall of adjudication, a vast space where polished lapis lazuli gleamed under shafts of sunlight, the opulence was overwhelming. Gold leaf adorned every pillar. Intricate carvings depicting the pharaoh's divine lineage stretched across the high ceilings, and the air was thick with the scent of lotus and myrrh. Petitioners, viziers, and noble families bowed low, their voices hushed to respectful whispers as they approached the golden throne. Each movement, each word, was a choreographed dance, a performance designed to reinforce the pharaoh's unassailable authority. Ren stood a few paces behind Kingland, her bearing quiet, her mind acutely perceptive. She observed the veiled smiles exchanged between courtiers, the subtle shifts in posture, the almost imperceptible tensing of shoulders when a rival was acknowledged. The royal court was a labyrinth of intrigue, a viper's nest where power was. A double-edged sword, a word misplaced, a gesture misinterpreted, could spell ruin, or worse, elevate an enemy. She had seen families torn apart by ambition, brothers betraying brothers for a closer proximity to the sun-crowned monarch. Even the bonds of family, supposedly sacred, could conceal the most treacherous rivalries. Kingland, for all his outward serenity, felt these undercurrents keenly. His paranoia, amplified by the crown's insidious influence, made him distrustful of even his most loyal advisors. He saw potential threats in every deferential bow, every eager glance. The whispers in his mind, now more persistent, urged caution, suspicion. They seek to undermine you, the silent voice would suggest, to chip away at the divine foundation you painstakingly maintain. He would clench his jaw, his gaze hardening, wondering if the loyal retainers, the very ones whose lives were bound to his, might not harbor secret ambitions for his premature departure. His thoughts often drifted to the Somnus crypt, his eternal resting place. He pictured its cold, polished black granite, the crystalline stone shimmering with the power of ancient warding spells. It was not merely a tomb, it was a fortress against oblivion, a testament to his unyielding quest for immortality. He had personally overseen its construction, driving the architects and stonemasons to ever greater feats, demanding passages so intricate they could confound even the spirits of the dead. It was to be a monument not just to his life, but to his endless reign beyond the veil. The chilling belief that loyal retainers would accompany him into the afterlife was not merely a tradition. It was, for Kingland, a profound necessity. How could a pharaoh, divine and eternal, exist without his devoted court, his essential support, even in death? He often reviewed the ossuary tablet in the quiet solitude of his private scriptorium. Its surface, cool and smooth beneath his fingertips, contained the complex, unholy incantations, the specific names of those destined to join him. It was the blueprint for grim, extended service beyond death, a document that bound souls to his will for all eternity. He remembered the day the ossuary tablet was brought to him for its first review, years ago. Wren had been present, her face unusually pale, her eyes fixed on the archaic script as if trying to decipher its dreadful meaning. He had seen the subtle flinch when his finger traced a name she likely knew. Wren's pragmatic nature, her quiet intelligence, had always been a solace, a clear pool in the turbulent currents of court. But he knew, too, that she understood the ultimate implication of her service. The knowledge was a silent burden she carried, a horror witnessed not in grand battles, but in the cold, calculated preparation for an eternal slumber. The pharaoh's obsession with his legacy wasn't solely about grand monuments or endless power. It was rooted in a primal fear, the fear of insignificance, of being forgotten, of failing Matt. Whispers of cosmic disruption had grown louder in recent months. The Nile's floods had been erratic, the desert winds unseasonably fierce, and the celestial alignments, meticulously charted by the royal astronomers, seemed subtly askew. These were not mere natural phenomena to Kingland. They were direct signs of his perceived divine failures, a cosmic unraveling that he, and he alone, was responsible for halting. The only way to appease the angered deities, to reweave the frayed threads of Maat, was through the grand consecration of silence. Preparations were already underway, hidden from the public eye. The public ritual, a meticulously choreographed performance, would take place in the great plaza before the citadel. Kingland would perform complex, symbolic gestures, channeling the power of the crown, calling upon the ancestors and the gods to rebalance the universe. But the public display was merely the veneer. Wren knew, as did a select few, that the true, unsettling work would follow in the deepest, most hidden chambers of the Sunstone Citadel. Private human sacrifices, ancient and brutal, were believed to be the ultimate offering, the final, desperate plea to ensure the ritual's success, to appease the cosmic forces that seemed to turn against his reign. The weight of these coming events pressed upon Kingland. He spent hours in meditation, trying to quiet the incessant whispers from the crown, to discern true divine guidance from the tendrils of paranoia. He would stand before the gilded statues of his ancestors, their vacant eyes seemingly judging his every move, their ancient silence a heavy shroud. Had they too felt this existential dread? Had they too resorted to such measures to preserve their eternal reign, to ensure the continuity of their line beyond death? He believed they had, for their legacies stood as unyielding stone against the eroding sands of time. You sense the chill that permeates the deepest parts of the Sunstone Citadel, a cold that has nothing to do with the desert night, but with the ancient, unyielding purpose it serves. The silent, echoing halls, once filled with the mundane sounds of court life, would soon bear witness to secrets that would turn the very air to ice. The pharaoh's relentless quest for immortality, a desperate grasp at forever. cast a long, unsettling shadow, not just over his life, but over the lives of those bound to his destiny. The very air around Ren seemed to grow heavier with the unspoken knowledge, the burden of witnessing the lengths to which power could twist the pursuit of an eternal legacy. As the sun climbed higher, casting long, stark shadows across the sunstone citadel, the intricate dance of the court continued, each step a testament to a world where divinity and humanity, power and dread were inextricably intertwined. And as you drift further into the dreamscape of ancient Kemet, you feel the subtle shift in the air, a precursor to events that will forever bind the living to the dead under the relentless gaze of a sun-crowned monarch. Like and subscribe for more calming journeys into forgotten histories. The whispers in Kinglan's mind intensified with the setting sun. No longer faint suggestions, but insistent pronouncements. They conspire. The balance falters. Matt demands more. You felt the shift in the citadel's vastness, a subtle tightening of the air, as if the very stone held its breath. The usual hum of court life receded, replaced by an undercurrent of urgency, a quiet dread that seeped from the inner sun. Lamps, flickering with oils of frankincense, cast long, dancing shadows along the polished sunstone walls, making the ancient carvings of deities and pharaohs seem to stir. Kingland now spent his twilight hours in the chamber of whispering glyphs, a circular room deep within the citadel, accessible only through a hidden passage behind a false wall. The air here was thick with the dust of millennia and the faint, metallic temps of ancient blood. Runes, etched into every surface, seemed to pulse with a faint, internal light, their purpose arcane and unsettling. He would sit on a low, unadorned stool, the crown of Etheria heavy on his head, his piercing gaze fixed on the ossuary tablet, which rested on a plinth of dark granite in the center of the room. Its surface, cool and smooth beneath his fingertips, seemed to absorb the light, reflecting only a deeper blackness. He traced the names inscribed there, each one a life bound to his eternal service, not just Master Harlan, the trusted royal vizier, but also Lady Seraphina, the chief scribe, Commander Baston, the captain of the royal guard, and a dozen others, from esteemed priests to the most diligent of his personal attendants. He murmured their names, a low litany that filled the silence of the chamber. Loyalty, beyond life, beyond death. The tremor in his left hand, now more pronounced, pulsed with the rhythm of his conviction. He saw their faces in his mind's eye, each one a testament to his divine right, each one a necessary sacrifice for the continuity of his power in the eternal realms. The crown pulsed in response, feeding the delusion, weaving the names into a grand tapestry of cosmic order. Ren often found him there, her quiet bearing a stark contrast to the room's oppressive energy. She would enter with offerings of chilled date wine and a dish of roasted quail, her footsteps muffled by the thick, woven rugs that covered the chamber floor. Her observant, shrewd eyes would sweep over the scene, registering the deepened shadows under Kingland's eyes, the slight slump of his shoulders despite the rigid posture. She saw the madness growing, a creeping tendril fed by the crown and his own existential fear. One evening, as she poured the wine, Kingland's gaze snapped up, his eyes seeming to pierce through her, not at her. "The signs, Ren," he rasped, his voice rough with lack of sleep. "They multiply. The sacred papyri speak of droughts unseen, of stars straying from their appointed paths. The Nile, it recedes further each season. Matt, she weeps." He rose, his tall frame suddenly gaunt beneath his silken robes, and moved to a small, hidden alcove. He pulled back a heavy tapestry, revealing a series of meticulously carved miniature dioramas depicting various celestial alignments and natural phenomena. Look, the conjunction of the scarab, delayed by a full moon cycle, the twin rivers of Osiris flowing backwards in the dream visions of the high priests. You felt the unsettling certainty in his voice, the complete conviction that these were not mere environmental shifts, but direct indictments of his reign. Ren's pragmatic mind grappled with the pharaoh's escalating paranoia. She knew the astronomers had reported unusual solar flares. The geographers spoke of shifting sands, and yes, the Nile's floods had been unpredictable. But to interpret them as personal affronts from the cosmos, requiring human sacrifice, this was the horror she carried, the weight of witnessing such calculated cruelty justified by divine mandate. She wanted to argue, to offer logical explanations, but the words would die in her throat, knowing the futility, knowing the price. The preparations for the grand consecration of silence began in earnest, cloaked in secrecy. You observed the increased activity in the lower, forgotten levels of the citadel. Artisans, their faces grim and silent, fashioned ceremonial blades from meteoric iron, their edges honed to a razor sharpness that glinted wickedly in the torchlight. Priests, their heads shaven and bodies painted with symbols of warding, moved, with somber purpose, preparing the potent unguents and incense that would cloak the true nature of the ritual. The air grew thick with the scent of bitter herbs and the low, rhythmic chanting that vibrated through the very foundations of the palace. The great plaza before the citadel, usually bustling with merchants and citizens, was slowly transformed. A colossal altar of polished obsidian was erected in its center, flanked by towering obelisks carved with hieroglyphs that recounted the pharaoh's lineage and divine right. Banners depicting the Eye of Horus and the Ankh of Life fluttered from every mast, catching the desert breeze. Musicians rehearsed the somber, resonant melodies meant to soothe the gods, their harps and flutes echoing through the vast space. The public aspect of the consecration was designed to inspire awe and reverence, to reinforce the image of Kingland as the cosmic anchor. On the appointed day, the air in the sunstone citadel crackled with anticipation. The city below pulsed, with the presence of thousands gathered in the plaza, awaiting the pharaoh's appearance. You stood with Ren on a high balcony overlooking the grand procession route, feeling the collective energy of the throng. Kingland emerged from the grand hall of adjudication, bathed in the morning sun, his robes of shimmering gold and deep lapis lazuli catching every ray. The crown of Etheria, gleaming with an almost blinding intensity, sat perfectly on his brow, its filigree seeming to pulse with a faint inner light. He moved with a deliberate, almost ethereal grace, descending the grand staircase, his weathered hands outstretched in symbolic gestures of appeasement and blessing. A chorus of 1,000 voices rose from the crowd, a single, sustained chant of praise to the sun-crowned monarch. You witnessed the awe in the eyes of the common people, their unwavering belief in his divinity. They saw not a man plagued by paranoia, but a god-king, a living conduit to Mat, performing a sacred duty for their very existence. Kingland ascended the obsidian altar in the plaza, facing east, towards the burgeoning sun. He performed the complex, symbolic gestures with an unwavering precision, his arms sweeping through the air, his fingers tracing invisible patterns that were believed to reweave the very fabric of the cosmos. He poured libations of sacred Nile water onto the altar, the liquid hissing as it met the hot stone. He scattered offerings of precious grains and fragrant herbs, each movement a meticulously choreographed performance designed to assure the masses, and perhaps himself, that he was indeed restoring balance. The crown of Ithera seemed to hum louder now, its subtle degradation of Kingland's mental state amplifying his conviction, making his performance even more compelling. He truly believed he was channeling the essence of Maat, drawing it into himself, then releasing it, a surge of pure divine energy flowing through his veins. His piercing gaze swept over the silent, expectant crowd, a gaze that seemed to hold the weight of the universe. The tremor in his left hand was gone, replaced by a rigid stillness, a testament to the absolute focus of the moment. The grand consecration of silence was, publicly, a resounding success. But Ren knew the truth, a chilling burden that weighed heavily on her quiet bearing. As the public ceremonies concluded and the crowds dispersed, murmuring with renewed hope, a different kind of activity began in the deepest, most hidden chambers of the Sunstone Citadel. These were the ritual chambers, ancient and rarely used, where the true, unsettling work of appeasing the cosmic forces would take place. You followed Ren, or felt yourself drawn alongside her, through winding, unlit passages, the air growing colder, heavier, until you reached a heavy, bronze-bound door, guarded by silent, imposing figures in dark robes. Beyond the door, the chamber was a vast, echoing cavern, lit only by the flickering glow of a central brazier, its flames casting dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls. The air was thick with the scent of blood and a cloying, metallic sweetness. Here, the raw, visceral reality of the Pharaoh's quest for immortality was laid bare. A large stone slab dominated the center of the room, surrounded by priests chanting in low, guttural tones. Figures, shrouded and silent, lay upon smaller altars nearby, their forms indistinct in the gloom. These were the unsettling, private, human sacrifices, not unwilling victims, but individuals chosen for their purity, their devotion, their willingness to become a conduit for cosmic appeasement. It was a horrifying testament to the lengths to which belief could twist even the concept of service. Kingland entered, his regal robes now replaced by a simpler, unadorned white linen. The crown of Ithera remained on his head, its subtle buzz, now a throbbing pulse, an incessant demand for more. His eyes, usually deep riverbed blue, seemed to hold a desperate, feverish glint. He moved to the central slab, his weathered hands performing ancient, brutal gestures as the chanting intensified. You could almost feel the cosmic energy he believed he was manipulating. The desperate, unholy pact being forged to restore Maat. Ren stood in a corner, her lithe form almost invisible in the shadows, her face pale, her shrewd eyes missing nothing, yet wishing they could unsee. She witnessed the horrifying efficacy of the ritual, the complete conviction in King's movements. She saw the light fade from the eyes of those offered, not with terror, but with a strange, almost peaceful resignation, as if they, too, believed their sacrifice was a cosmic necessity. This was the horror she bore, the quiet skepticism battling against the chilling reality of what absolute power, fused with existential dread, could compel a ruler to do. The silence that followed each offering was profound, a vacuum in the air, broken only by the crackle of the brazier and the soft, rhythmic breathing of the priests. Days turned into weeks. The public face of Kingland was serene, authoritative, seemingly restored by the successful consecration. The court resumed its intricate dance, though you noticed a deeper quiet among the viziers, a subtle tension that spoke of the secrets held. But in private, Kingland's decline accelerated. The crown's residue had done its work. The incessant whispers had transformed into roaring demands, the paranoia into full-blown delusions. He spoke of the gods directly, of their satisfaction, but also of their impatience. His nights were restless, filled with visions he claimed were divine directives, preparing him for his ultimate journey. The signs of his failing health became impossible to ignore. His already gaunt frame grew thinner, his skin taking on a translucent quality. His once piercing gaze would occasionally drift, losing its focus before snapping back with a sudden, unsettling intensity. The tremor in his left hand became a constant, visible shake. He ate little, slept less, consumed entirely by the thought of his legacy, his eternal reign. He believed his time was drawing near, not through illness, but through a divine calling to join his ancestors and continue his work beyond the veil. The preparations for the ascent to the Somnus crypt began. You felt the city hold its breath, sensing the impending shift. The news of the pharaoh's failing health spread like wildfire, mingled with whispers of his divine transcendence. The streets filled with mourners, their laments mingling with chants of praise. The day of the ascent arrived with a heavy, oppressive stillness. The sky was a vast, unbroken sheet of lapis lazuli, a stark contrast to the somber procession that now snaked through the city. Kingland, dressed in robes of shimmering black and gold, was carried on a gilded litter, his body frail, but his eyes still fixed with a fierce, unwavering purpose. The crown of Ithera, his constant companion, still rested on his brow, its faint buzz now an almost audible thrum, the final stage of its insidious work. The procession moved slowly, majestically, towards the edge of the desert, where the entrance to the Somnus crypt lay, a gaping maw in the earth, carved deep beneath the sands. The crypt itself was a chilling sight, its entrance, a monumental archway of polished black granite, seemed to absorb the sunlight, radiating an ancient cold. As the procession passed beneath it, the air grew instantly frigid, a cold that bit to the bone, not of temperature, but of profound, eternal stillness. Inside, the labyrinthine passages, carved deep into stone, shimmered with crystalline formations that caught the faint torchlight, creating an otherworldly glow. Complex mechanical traps, hidden from the untrained eye, were embedded in the walls and floor, designed to deter any who might seek to disturb the pharaoh's eternal slumber. Ancient, powerful warding spells, etched into every surface, pulsed with a faint, unseen energy, meant to protect not just the body, but the very essence of the departed monarch. Kingland was carried to the central chamber, a vast, echoing space where his sarcophagus, crafted from a single block of shimmering black obsidian, awaited. It was a monument to his unyielding quest for immortality, a fortress against oblivion. The air in the chamber was thick with the scent of myrrh and the quiet, reverent chanting of the priests. Ren stood near the sarcophagus, her heart a cold knot in her chest. She watched as the designated retainers, their names meticulously listed on the ossuary tablet, were brought forward. Master Harlan, his face etched with a mix of terror and profound, unwavering loyalty, was among them. Lady Seraphina, her eyes filled with tears, yet resolute. Commander Baston, standing tall, accepting his fate with the rigid discipline of a soldier. These were not prisoners. They were loyal servants, their lives bound to the pharaoh's will, their service extended beyond the veil of death itself. The ritual was swift, chilling in its calculated efficiency. Each retainer was brought before the pharaoh, who, despite his failing state, extended a trembling hand, touching their foreheads in a final gesture of divine command. Then, with an almost tender reverence, they were given a potent, ritualistic sedative, a draught that would induce a deep, dreamless slumber, a stillness indistinguishable from death itself. Their bodies, now limp and unresisting, were then carefully lowered into small, carved alcoves surrounding the pharaoh's sarcophagus, sealed within the cold embrace of the black granite. They were to be interred live, their service continuing, eternally bound to their monarch, a chilling demonstration of absolute power and the dark side of the immortality quest. You watched Ren's face, a mask of quiet resolve. She knew this was the ultimate horror, the pragmatic realization of a deeply disturbing belief. She had prepared these sedatives, ensuring their efficacy, knowing that her own name, someday, might appear on a similar tablet for a future pharaoh. Her loyalty remained, but it was now a loyalty tempered by a profound sadness, a heavy burden of witness. Finally, King Land, still conscious, though barely, was gently lifted and placed within his obsidian sarcophagus. The crown of Etheria was carefully removed from his head, its subtle hum now fading to a soft whisper as it was placed upon a velvet cushion beside him. His eyes, the color of deep riverbeds, looked up for a final moment, not at Ren or the priests, but at the unseen ceiling, as if gazing into the very cosmos he had fought so desperately to control. A faint smile, almost imperceptible, touched his lips. Perhaps, in his final moments, the crown's influence granted him the delusion of ultimate success, the promise of an eternal reign. The great stone lid, massive and heavy, was slowly lowered, sealing the sarcophagus with a resounding thud that echoed through the cold chambers of the somnus crypt. The sound reverberated through the very earth, a final pronouncement of his legacy, his eternity secured. The chilling belief in extended service beyond death had been fulfilled. As the ancient stories softly unfold, you find yourself pondering the true cost of absolute power and the lengths to which humanity will go in pursuit of an eternal legacy. The pharaoh's relentless quest for immortality had reached its chilling conclusion, a testament carved in stone and etched into the souls of those bound to his will. The whispers of the past now truly envelop you, inviting you to rest as the captivating, yet often disturbing, lives of these god-kings and queens drift through your consciousness, now forever entwined with the silent depths of the somnus crypt. Like and subscribe for more calming journeys into forgotten histories, as the great stone lid settled into place, sealing Kingland within the eternal embrace of the somnus crypt. A profound quiet descended upon the assembled priests and remaining retainers. The echoes of the thud faded, leaving only the cold, still air of the tomb. You felt a release, a collective sigh from the very stones, perhaps, that the long, unsettling ritual had finally concluded. Yet, a new tension immediately began to coil, an unspoken question hanging in the frigid air. What now? Ren stood, a solitary figure, near the newly sealed sarcophagus, her quiet bearing masking a turmoil that threatened to unravel her composure. Her shrewd eyes, usually so observant, were now clouded with a deep weariness. The chilling efficiency of the ascent had left an indelible mark, another layer added to the horrors she had already witnessed. She had done her duty, prepared the sedatives, watched loyal souls succumb to a dreamless sleep that was but a prelude to eternal, conscious servitude. The air around her still hummed with the lingering presence of the crown of Etheria, though it now lay inert beside Kingland. Within the obsidian tomb, its insidious hum silenced. But its legacy, its terrible blueprint, remained. The period of official mourning was meticulously observed, a performance of profound grief for the departed pharaoh. Public laments echoed through the sunstone citadel's grand halls and across the city's plazas. Priests conducted daily rites, their voices rising in mournful chants, honoring Kingland's journey to the afterlife. Yet, beneath this veneer of sorrow, the court pulsed with a different kind of energy, the subtle, intricate dance of succession. The heir presumptive, Prince Theron, Kingland's eldest son, now stepped into the blinding light of the throne. Theron was a man of 35 cycles, with a sharp, intelligent mind and a bearing that combined his father's regal posture with a youthful impatience. Unlike Kingland, who had grown into his paranoia, Theron harbored a more direct, almost academic fascination with the cosmic order, less existential dread, more intellectual challenge. He had observed his father's later years with a mix of reverence and a quiet, analytical distance, often questioning the more extreme interpretations of Mat, though never daring to voice them aloud. You watched Theron during the initial ceremonies, his eyes a lighter shade of blue than his father's, often straying towards the closed chamber doors of the somnus crypt, as if he could already feel the weight of its secrets. He moved with a confident stride, yet there was a subtle tension in his shoulders, a hint of the immense burden he was about to inherit. Wren, still in her role as a trusted attendant, found herself increasingly in Theron's orbit. He sought her counsel on administrative matters, respecting her pragmatic intelligence, unaware of the deep skepticism that lay beneath her loyal facade. Weeks passed, and the formal rites culminated in the coronation of the new crown. The entire kingdom converged on the great plaza once more, but this time, the atmosphere was one of fervent expectation rather than solemn farewell. Theron, robed in brilliant white linen embroidered with gold thread, ascended the same obsidian altar where his father had performed the grand consecration of silence. The transition was seamless, the ritual ancient and immutable. Then came the moment you had awaited with a peculiar mix of dread and morbid curiosity. The high priest, an ancient man with eyes like polished obsidian, approached Theron bearing the crown of Etheria upon a cushion of crimson velvet. The crown, cleansed and ritually purified after its time in the crypt, seemed to shimmer with an almost ethereal light in the midday sun. It was thinner now, more delicate in its filigree, yet still radiating that faint, almost imperceptible hum. Theron knelt, his head bowed, as the high priest gently placed the crown upon his brow. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by a roaring cheer. You saw Theron's eyes flutter for a moment, a subtle widening as the crown settled, as if a sudden, chilling cold had enveloped his mind. He straightened, his gaze now sweeping over the throng, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor beginning in his left hand. The crown of Etheria had found its new host, and its work had begun anew. In the days that followed, the subtle degradation of Theron's mental state began to manifest, mirroring his father's initial decline, though with his own unique twist. Where Kingland's paranoia was born of existential dread, Theron's manifested as an intensified, almost obsessive pursuit of perfect cosmic order. He saw Mat not just as a balance to maintain, but as a complex puzzle to solve, a grand cosmic machine he was destined to fine-tune. He spent countless hours in the royal archives, poring over ancient texts, scrolls, and star charts, seeking patterns, anomalies, and obscure prophecies. Wren observed him with a heavy heart. She saw the same shadows, deepening under his eyes, the same withdrawal from the mundane realities of court life. His conversations grew increasingly abstract, filled with references to celestial alignments and the delicate vibrations of the universe. He still possessed his sharp intellect, but it was now entirely consumed by this singular focus. He commissioned new astronomical observatories atop the citadel, demanding ever more precise measurements of the stars, convinced that in their movements lay the keys to truly mastering Mat. The court, initially relieved by Theron's more scholarly demeanor compared to Kingland's later fits of divine conviction, slowly grew wary. Master Alistair, a prominent vizier who had harbored ambitions of his own, began to subtly sow seeds of doubt among the lesser nobles. Alistair, a man of 42 cycles, with a smooth, deceptive smile and eyes that held calculating depths, had been a rival of Theron's even before Kingland's death. He saw Theron's scholarly pursuits as weakness, a distraction from the firm hand required to rule. He whispered of unmanly obsessions and neglect of earthly duties, his words carefully chosen to resonate with the traditionalists and those who feared a departure from the established order. You noticed the growing faction around Alistair, their hushed conversations in shadowed corners, their glances towards Theron, now crowned, but still seen by some as unproven. Wren, ever vigilant, sensed the currents of discontent. Her loyalty to the throne was unwavering, but her heart ached for Theron, trapped within the crown's subtle, insidious influence. She understood that this was not mere intellectual curiosity. It was the crown twisting his keen mind, feeding his need for perfection, pushing him towards a similar, inescapable fate as his father. One cool evening, Theron summoned Wren to his private study, a room filled with scrolls and intricate models of the cosmos. The crown of Etheria pulsed faintly on his brow, its filigree seemingly intertwined with the very lines of his thought. "Wren," he began, his voice a low, intense whisper, "I have been studying the ancient texts, the deepest records of our predecessors. There is a truth concealed within the law, a secret to perfect Mat that even my father, for all his devotion, did not fully grasp." He gestured to a scroll unrolled on a large table, covered in complex diagrams and what appeared to be mathematical equations, the balance of the universe. It is not merely about appeasement, but about precise calibration. The sacrifices, they are not enough. There must be a constant, living conduit, a perpetual resonance. Your breath hitched as he spoke. Perpetual resonance. The words hung in the air, echoing the chilling concept of extended service. Wren's internal alarm bells screamed. She had seen the ossuary tablet, understood its grim purpose. She feared what Theron's precise calibration might entail. Theron turned, his eyes alight with a feverish intensity. "I believe the Somnus Crypt itself holds the key, not just as a tomb, but as a crucible, a device. The warding spells, the mechanical traps, they are not merely for protection. They are components of a grand design, a mechanism to harness the energies of the departed, to feed them into a constant stream of divine power that flows back into Mat." He spoke of plans to expand the Somnus Crypt, to carve out new, deeper levels, not just for future pharaohs, but for a new class of eternal servants, individuals chosen not just for their loyalty, but for their specific spiritual resonance, their ability to contribute to this perpetual flow. He envisioned a network of chambers, each holding a designated soul, a living battery feeding the cosmic balance. He showed Wren blueprints, intricate and terrifying, depicting subterranean canals channeling ethereal energy, vast ritual chambers where this energy would be collected. This was Theron's new obsession, born of the crown's influence, his intellect twisted into a horrifying instrument of cosmic manipulation. He was not plagued by Kingland's raw paranoia, but by a cold, calculating desire to perfect the divine order, to force Mat into a permanent, unassailable balance. The unsettling practices were now being refined, made even more systematic and grand in scale. Ren listened, her face impassive, her mind racing. This was beyond anything King Lend had envisioned. This was not just about securing one Pharaoh's immortality, but about fundamentally altering the fabric of death and service for an entire lineage. She had seen the ossuary tablet. She knew the names it contained. She knew the process. But this was an exponential leap into the horrifying unknown. The political tensions at court escalated as Theron's new project began to take shape. While the public saw continued expansion of the royal necropolis, whispers of its true purpose, distorted and exaggerated, began to circulate among the lower court. Alistair seized upon this. He began to paint Theron as a heretic, one who sought to usurp the gods themselves, twisting the sacred rites for his own unholy experiments. He gathered support from the more conservative priests and military commanders, leveraging their fear of cosmic imbalance and their personal ambitions. You felt the court becoming a coiled serpent, ready to strike. The lavish banquets and ceremonial dances seemed a grotesque mockery, a thin veil over the simmering resentment. Ren found herself caught in the crossfire. Theron relied on her intelligence for his projects, viewing her as one of the few who truly understood his vision. But Alistair also sought her out, attempting to gauge her loyalty, to perhaps even turn her. One day, Alistair cornered Ren in a secluded corridor of the citadel, the polished sunstone walls reflecting the tension in his gaze. "The Pharaoh drifts, Ren," he murmured, his voice laced with false concern. His mind, it is consumed by phantoms, by mad visions of endless crypts and harnessed souls. This is not the path of Mat. This is hubris. The gods will not tolerate it. He paused, his eyes narrowing. You serve him closely. You see the truth. Does your loyalty extend to madness? Ren met his gaze, her own eyes revealing nothing. My loyalty is to the throne, Vizier, she replied, her voice calm, though her heart pounded in her chest. And to the stability of the kingdom. She knew Alistair's true motivations were power, not piety. But she also knew his words held a terrifying kernel of truth about Theron's increasingly disturbing quest. The conflict culminated during the annual festival of the Nile's Bounty, a celebration usually marked by joyous revelry. Theron chose this occasion to unveil a detailed model of his expanded Somnus crypt, a vast, multi-layered structure of intricate chambers glowing with arcane symbols, designed to be the ultimate cosmic engine. As he presented his vision to the assembled court and high priests, explaining his theories of perpetual resonance and soul conduits, a palpable unease spread through the grand hall. Alistair, seizing his moment, stepped forward, his face etched with feigned sorrow. Your Majesty, he intoned, his voice carrying through the hushed hall. Your vision is grand, perhaps too grand for mortal men. To bind souls eternally, to redirect the very currents of the afterlife. This trespasses upon the domain of Osiris himself. The balance you seek to impose, I fear, will shatter Mat rather than secure it. We risk incurring the wrath of the gods, bringing drought and famine, not prosperity. His words struck a chord. The murmurs grew louder. Theron, his eyes blazing with the crown's intensified influence, saw this as a direct challenge to his divine understanding, an affront to his enlightened path. Silence, Vizier, he thundered, his voice echoing King Lan's imperious command. You speak of fear, I speak of progress. My father merely understood the sacrifice. I will master the essence. The crown of Etheria pulsed violently on Theron's head, its light flickering, reflecting the inner turmoil. His left hand, now shaking visibly, clenched into a fist. He was not Keeneland ruled by dread, but Theron, driven by an intellectual arrogance twisted by the crown's subtle degradation. He truly believed he was achieving a higher understanding, that Alistair was merely ignorant. Ren watched, her heart a heavy stone. She knew this confrontation was inevitable. She saw the potential for civil strife, for the kingdom to be torn apart by a pharaoh's maddened pursuit of a false perfection. She had witnessed the costs of power, the sacrifices demanded, the lives extinguished for a delusion. She couldn't stand by as Theron marched down the same dark path, perhaps even deeper, into its chilling abyss. Later that night, as the Sunstone Citadel settled into a tense silence, Ren made a decision. It was a perilous one, a gamble with her life, but one she felt compelled to take. She slipped away from her quarters, moving through the hidden passages of the Citadel, passages she knew intimately from years of service. Her destination was not Theron's study, nor Alistair's chambers. It was a rarely used section of the Citadel's deep archives, a place where forgotten scrolls and discarded artifacts lay undisturbed for centuries. She sought a specific set of texts, rumors of which she had heard from elderly scribes in hushed tones, texts that spoke not of the crown's glory, but of its ancient, forgotten origins, of a time before it was solely a symbol of divine authority, of its true, original purpose. It was a desperate hope, a long shot, but she needed to understand the root of the madness that afflicted every wearer. By the flickering light of a stolen oil lamp, Ren located the dusty, brittle papyri. Their hieroglyphs were ancient, even by the standards of the court, their language archaic. She spent hours deciphering them, her keen mind sifting through the layers of metaphor and ritualistic prose. What she uncovered sent a chill far deeper than any she had felt in the somnus crypt. The crown of Etheria was not merely a channel format, it was a relic crafted in a forgotten age, designed to absorb residual cosmic energy from the wearer to recharge a dying celestial entity, a minor godling named Etheria, whose essence had been waning. The divine authority it bestowed was merely a byproduct, a subtle infusion of Etheris' remaining power, which then, in turn, subtly consumed the wearer's life force and mental clarity, twisting their deepest desires into obsessive quests that would generate the necessary psychic energy for the godling's survival. The mystical residue was not just a side effect, it was the mechanism of consumption, slowly degrading the wearer's mental state to amplify the emotional and spiritual output, making them a more potent battery. The paranoia, the grand delusions, the relentless quest for immortality. These were not human flaws, but symptoms of a parasitic bond, the godling Etheria subtly guiding its hosts to ensure its own eternal existence. The chilling belief that loyal retainers might accompany their ruler into the afterlife. Their service extended beyond the veil of death itself was not a cosmic necessity but a cunning design. The ossuary tablet, with its precise list of names, was not a blueprint for divine service, but a roster of additional power sources, their living internment creating a surge of terror, devotion, and raw life energy that Etheria could then consume, especially within the confines of the Somnus crypt, which acted as a vast, resonant chamber. Ren felt the weight of this horrifying truth settle upon her. It was not Matt demanding sacrifices, it was a dying godling, clinging to existence through the systematic mental and spiritual consumption of its pharaohs and their loyal subjects. Kingland's existential dread, Theron's obsessive perfectionism, both were manifestations of Etheirist's desperate hunger, twisting human ambition into self-destructive paths. The consecration of silence, the ascent to the crypt, the live interments, all of it was a grand, meticulously choreographed feeding ritual. She knew she could not simply tell Theron. His mind, already under the crown's sway, would reject it as heresy, as a direct attack on his divine mission. Alistair would dismiss it as madness, perhaps even use it to solidify his claims of Theron's instability. This secret, if revealed, could tear the kingdom apart, not just politically, but spiritually. Ren had to act, not for the throne, but for the people, for the truth, and for the cycle of madness to end. Her pragmatic nature asserted itself. The crown could not simply be destroyed. Its essence was too deeply intertwined with the royal lineage and the very concept of pharaonic rule. But it could be neutralized. The ancient texts spoke of a way to sever a Theorist connection, a ritual of containment rather than destruction, performed not in the grand hall, but in a place of deep stillness, far from the echoes of human ambition. A place where the earth itself had forgotten the touch of man. Her plan was audacious, dangerous, and required immense precision. She needed to retrieve the crown from Theron without alerting the court, without causing a public spectacle. And she needed to do it before Alistair's faction made their move, plunging the kingdom into chaos. The opportunity came during the Pharaoh's nightly meditation, a time when Theron, steeped in the crown's influence, would retreat to a solitary chamber within the citadel, dismissing all but a single, trusted guard, a guard she had known for years, a man whose quiet devotion was matched only by his profound weariness with the court's endless intrigues. Ren approached the chamber, her lithe form cloaked in shadow, her quiet bearing her greatest asset. The guard, Kaelan, met her gaze, his eyes reflecting a silent question. "The Pharaoh has sent for me, Kaelan," she murmured, her voice steady, though her heart pounded. "He requires a specific scroll from his personal archives." It was a lie, but a plausible one. Kaelan nodded, a weary resignation on his face, and unbarred the heavy wooden door. Inside, Theron sat on a low cushion, eyes closed, the crown of Etheria pulsing with an unnerving intensity on his brow. He was deep in a trance, communing with the false divinity that consumed him. Ren moved silently, her hand reaching for the crown. Just as her fingers brushed the cold metal, Theron's eyes snapped open. His gaze, usually alight with his intellectual fire, was now clouded with a deep, consuming rage. A rage born of the crown's parasitic instinct. "Ren," he rasped, his voice thick with unholy power, "what is this trespass? You seek to break the sacred bond, to sever Mat." He rose, his movements stiff, almost puppet-like, controlled by the frantic pulses of the crown. "No, Your Majesty," Ren said, her voice soft but firm. "I seek to free you, to free us all from this ancient lie." She explained, quickly, concisely. The truth of Etheria, the parasitic nature of the crown, the systematic consumption. Theron laughed, a chilling, hollow sound. "A lie. This is truth, Ren. I feel the cosmic currents. I am mastering Mat. You are deluded, misguided." He lunged, a sudden, surprising burst of strength, reaching for her. But Ren was quicker, anticipating the crown's desperate reaction. With a swift, practiced movement, she unclasped the crown of Etheria from his head. As it left his brow, the light that pulsed around it faded, dimming to a faint, sickly glow. Theron staggered, his eyes widening, the rage slowly draining from them, replaced by a profound confusion, then a terrible realization. The tremor in his left hand, momentarily gone, returned with a violent shake. The sudden absence of the crown's insidious whisper left his mind reeling, vulnerable, exposed to the horrifying truth. "What have you done?" he whispered, his voice weak, disbelieving. The clarity, the chilling reality of his actions under the crown's influence began to flood his consciousness. The grand models of the expanded Somnus crypt, the horrifying concept of conduits, the memories of Kingland's decline, and the terror of the ossuary tablet, it all rushed in, unmediated by the crown's lies. "I have given you back your mind, Your Majesty," Wren replied, her voice filled with a quiet sorrow. She held the crown, now truly inert, a cold, dead weight in her hands. The ensuing days were a blur of delicate maneuvering. Theron, stripped of the crown's influence, quickly grasped the magnitude of the deception, the paranoia, the obsessive drive, the chilling plans all dissipated, leaving him with a profound sense of shame and horror. He understood what Kingland had truly endured, and what he himself had almost become. With Wren's quiet counsel, Theron began to subtly dismantle his cosmic engine project. He publicly announced a new focus on practical agricultural reforms and infrastructure development, diverting resources away from the Somnus crypt. He also initiated a review of court positions, quietly reassigning Alistair to a distant administrative post, effectively removing him from the Sunstone Citadel without a direct confrontation that would expose the crown's secret. The crown of Ithria itself, now inert, was taken by Wren to the deepest, most sacred part of the Somnus crypt, not to Kingland's chamber, but to a hidden fissure known only to a few ancient priests, a place where the earth's own stillness was absolute, a void where no psychic energy could resonate. There, she performed the ancient ritual of containment, sealing the relic within a crystalline sarcophagus, surrounded by true warding spells designed not to enhance a godling, but to suppress its influence forever. It would remain a symbol of past authority, but its insidious power, its parasitic hum, would never again twist the mind of a pharaoh. Theron ruled for many peaceful cycles. He was known as the restorer of Mat, not through grand, unsettling rituals, but through pragmatic governance, a renewed focus on his people's well-being, and a quiet, profound wisdom born of his terrifying brush with delusion. He never wore another crown, choosing instead a simple headcloth, a stark contrast to the glittering opulence of his predecessors. The ossuary tablet was removed from public display, and while the tradition of royal burial in the Somnus crypt continued, the chilling practice of live interments ceased forever. Wren remained by his side, his most trusted advisor. Her loyalty was no longer burdened by skepticism, but was now a quiet, knowing devotion to a ruler who understood the true cost of power and the insidious nature of unchecked ambition. She carried the secrets of the crown within her, a silent guardian of a truth too profound and disturbing for the common understanding. As the ancient stories softly unfold, you find yourself pondering the true cost of absolute power and the lengths to which humanity will go in pursuit of an eternal legacy. The Pharaohs' relentless quest for immortality, revealed as a parasitic deception, had finally reached its chilling, yet ultimately redemptive, conclusion. The whispers of the past now truly envelop you, inviting you to rest as the captivating, yet often disturbing, lives of these god kings and queens drift through your consciousness, now forever entwined with the silent depths of the somnous crypt, its darkest secret finally put to rest. Like and subscribe for more calming journeys into forgotten histories.